I have no idea how to get a high score on IELTS reading. Every single time I do a practice test, I get a low score. I can't finish the section on time. I'm so confused by all these advanced words. How am I supposed to know things about space, engineering, psychology, or economics in English? I know all the strategies, but still make mistakes when it comes to doing practice tests. What should I do? These are just a few questions IELTS students usually have when it comes to the reading section. As part of the IELTS prep course we created, I give consultations to students where I evaluate their speaking and writing. But in about 50% of cases, students who come to these sessions ask us to focus on the reading instead, because they 1. Can't consistently get the score they need, 2. Fail to finish all the questions on time, 3. Don't understand the academic words the IELTS reading section bombards them with, and 4. Can't effectively use the strategies they learned for every question type. So, if you are an IELTS test taker and have no idea how to tackle the IELTS reading section, this is the video for you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to get more tips and tricks about the test, and click the bell icon to be notified when the next video comes out. Today, we'll analyze one passage from the IELTS reading section so that you can see for yourself that this section is not as scary as it may seem. We'll analyze the question types, check out the strategies for them, and most importantly, learn how to apply these strategies on real tests. If you're watching this video now and want to learn the templates to score high on IELTS speaking and writing, click on this link. You can choose the Pro package if you want to get your essays and speaking responses evaluated. I personally consider this option the most helpful, as I'll tell you what you specifically are doing wrong and what you should do differently to get a higher score. The thing is, I often see students with a good level of English who could have scored high, but they just do the wrong things and keep scoring low. And very often, there are just a few little things that stand between them and getting the score they really deserve. Now, on the day of the test, you'll have 3 passages with questions after each. Usually, the first text is the easiest, and they progressively get more difficult. For example, look at these passages. I took them from Cambridge Prep Book 18. The first text is about urban farming, which is a difficult topic, but not very difficult. The second one is about forest management in Pennsylvania, a bit more challenging. And finally, the last text is about conquering Earth's space junk problem. Much more challenging, isn't it? So today, let's do this last and most difficult passage. The first thing to do is to read the title and the lead. For those who don't know, the lead is the first 2 to 3 sentences that give you a quick preview of the content and grab your interest. It usually explains the main points or what the article will cover. Satellites, rocket shards, and collision debris are creating major traffic risks in orbit around the planet. Researchers are working to reduce these threats. Simply put, space junk, like old satellites and rocket parts, is making it crowded and dangerous around Earth. Scientists are trying to find ways to reduce this problem. Now, let's go to the questions. Some students prefer to read the text first to get a better understanding of it. Feel free to do this if you're a fast reader. If you aren't, it's better to look at the questions first. We have matching paragraph information, summary completion, and matching features question types. Lots of matching will be on our agenda today. For the record, many students find matching questions the hardest because they test your overall understanding of the information you read. If you are new to all these question types and want to learn a perfect strategy for each one, click on this link to get access to our IELTS prep course. We'll teach you everything you need to know to consistently get high scores on IELTS reading. The first 5 questions. In this section, you should match the information given with the paragraphs. Remember that the answers can be anywhere in the passage. Let's analyze what information we'll be matching. It's important to do this before turning to the text, so that you know what to look for when reading. Now, that's one reason why I don't suggest reading the text first if your level is not very good. Imagine you've just tried reading this text. there will be tons of unfamiliar words and difficult concepts. You'll waste time trying to understand everything. And then, for this particular question, you'll need to read this text once again to find the given information. So, as I said earlier, it's better to start reading, keeping in mind what you're looking for. As I read, I try to predict what kind of paragraph I'll expect to find. 27. A reference to the cooperation that takes place to try and minimize risk. I'll be looking for a paragraph that mentions a cooperation between different parties to minimize risk. 28. An explanation of a person's aims. A paragraph containing this information should mention an individual and why he or she has certain goals. Again, we're not looking for keywords, just the concepts. 29. A description of a major collision that occurred in space. This paragraph should describe a big collision that happened in space. A collision is a crash. Occurred means happened. 30. A comparison between tracking objects in space and the efficiency of a transportation system. This paragraph will compare tracking objects in space to a transportation system. So you'll want to see the transportation system mentioned. 31. A reference to efforts to classify space junk. This sentence shows that the paragraph should mention what people or companies are trying to do to classify space junk. To classify is to arrange in classes or categories. There is also another word for this, taxonomy. It's very popular in IELTS. It means the practice and science of categorization or classification. So watch out for it. To recap, 27. Mention cooperation. 28. Explain a person's goals. 29. Describe a big crash. 30. Compare to a transportation system. 31. Mention attempts to classify space junk. Taxonomy. As you can see, the goal is to simplify each piece of information and predict what you're looking for. Now, let's get back to the text. As you read through it, don't focus on the words you don't know or difficult concepts. Instead, try to extract the main idea. We learned that they sent more than 400 satellites into orbit, 4 times more than in the previous 10 years. A decade is a period of 10 years, and these numbers can increase even further. Nothing relevant for now. Then I see that all that traffic can lead to disaster. 10 years ago, a US commercial satellite smashed into an inactive Russian satellite, and it created thousands of new pieces of space shrapnel. Smashed. They smashed into each other. So there was a crash. Further down the paragraph, I have another important line. Satellite operators can steer away from every potential crash. This means that this paragraph describes a major collision that occurred in space. So 29 is A. Good. Let's keep reading. The number of objects in orbit is increasing, so researchers are investigating or studying ways to solve this problem. Rise equals increase. Attack the problem equals solve or tackle the problem. Several teams are trying to improve methods for assessing what's in orbit so that satellite operators can work more effectively. Efficiently equals effectively. Some researchers collect a lot of information on where everything is in orbit. Compile equals put together, like put in a pile. Massive data equals a lot of information. Others are developing taxonomies of space debris. So this paragraph is about different ways to classify space junk. So 31 is B. Let's move on. In paragraph C, we learn that our ability to monitor space objects increases, and so does the total number of items in orbit. So companies, governments, and other players in space are collaborating or cooperating to avoid a shared threat. Threat is synonymous to danger. We then see some examples of international groups and what they do, and intergovernmental groups and what they advise. So they are talking about cooperation to solve the problem, which means that 27, a reference to the cooperation that takes place to try and minimize risk, is C. Again, remember that you don't want to focus on words you don't understand. Instead, focus on the words you know and try to extract the main idea. This will save you a lot of time. Moving on, paragraph D is about scientists trying to solve or tackle the problem of space junk. Tackle is a very popular word in IELTS. It means to make efforts to deal with a problem or a task. They try to find out where all the debris is. So for those who don't know, debris is the remains of something that has been destroyed or broken up. So it's trash that is usually scattered around after a disaster. The idea that is repeated in this paragraph is that if you know precisely where space debris is, you will be able to fly without hitting it. We don't have any of the information given in this paragraph, so let's skip it. Section E begins with the sentence. The field is called space traffic management because it's similar to managing traffic on the roads or in the air. And then they provide an example illustrating this comparison. I don't need to go into detail because it's already clear that 30 is E. This paragraph makes a comparison between tracking objects in space and the efficiency of a transportation system. Watch out for paraphrases. Transportation system, managing traffic on the roads or in the air. Now, F covers an additional problem, which is that there is no authoritative catalog that lists the orbits of all known space debris. We then learn about how this problem is illustrated by Ja through his web-based database. There is a detailed explanation of how the database works. Then we see that he describes himself as a space environmentalist. He says, I want to make space a place that is safe to operate, that is free and useful for generations to come. For the record, generations to come means future generations. I want shows us that it's his goal or aim. So 28 is F. As you can see, when we know how to analyze the statements effectively and what to look for in the text, matching the information to the right paragraph is not that difficult. During my one-on-one sessions, I often see students who struggle with the reading section, and they think they'll never master it. What we usually do is go through a couple of reading passages together, so that I can correct their strategy. And what's interesting is that every single student usually says like, whoa, I didn't know it's that simple. I thought the reading section was much harder. So obviously, your success depends on your vocabulary, but it's also largely about how well you know what to do and how fast you can do it. You should approach this section mechanically, like a robot, and know 100% what to do next. So let's proceed to the second part of the task, questions 32 to 35. You need to complete the summary with only one word. This question type is usually a bit easier, as you can use keywords to help you locate the right answers. Now, I already have a pretty good understanding of at least the first part of the text, which will be of extra help. I start by reading the summary and identify keywords to help me locate the right answers. As I read, I also try to get a general understanding of the summary. I can also use grammar to help me predict the right answers. Let's begin. The committee gives advice on how the blank of space can be achieved. The keyword is committee. All the other words in this sentence might be changed. The word committee is the only one that will most likely remain the same. I see the definite article before the blank, so the answer is a noun. For example, it could be the exploration of space. Let's look at the text. I remember reading about the committee before. Here is the sentence. International groups, such as the Interagency Space Debris Coordination Committee, have developed guidelines on space sustainability. Guidelines equals advice. Space sustainability equals the blank of space. So the right answer is sustainability. Again, always expect to find paraphrases and synonyms. So your strategy is first find keywords to locate the part to read, and then read this part carefully to find the answer, 33 to 34. The committee advises that when satellites are no longer active, any unused blank or pressurized material that could cause blank should be removed. It's still about the committee, so I'll stick to the same part of the text. Answers 33 and 34 are nouns. Let's find this information in the text. Those include inactivating satellites at the end of their useful life by venting pressurized materials or leftover fuel that might lead to explosions. For answer 33, I'm looking for something unused. The answer is fuel. Leftover means remaining, so leftover fuel is the fuel that hasn't been used. 34 is about what leftover fuel or pressurized material could cause. So, the correct answer is explosions. Finally, 35. Holger Krag points out that the operators that become blank are unlikely to prioritize removing their satellites from space. This part is about Holger Krag, so I should check out the parts of the text that mention him. The answer will most likely be an adjective. The keywords in this sentence are operators, satellite constellations, stewards of space, and satellites. As I keep reading the same paragraph, I find information about Holger Krag. I also see many of the keywords. The part I should pay close attention to is this. But Krag worries that problems could increase despite their best intentions. What happens to those that fail or go bankrupt? He asks. They're probably not going to spend money to remove their satellites from space. That's the part I need. The operators that become bankrupt. So bankrupt is our answer. Again, as you can see, the whole process is very mechanical. You use keywords to locate the right part of the text. You then read this part carefully and determine the right answer. You also expect synonyms and paraphrases for the majority of the words. And focus on the main idea of the sentence. Part 2, done. Finally, questions 36 to 40 are another matching task. This time you need to match each statement with the correct person. I'll start by analyzing the statements first. Then I will locate all parts of the text mentioning these people. Then I will do the matching. 36. Knowing the exact location of space junk would help prevent any possible danger. Important information, exact location, help prevent danger. 37. Space should be available to everyone and should be preserved for the future. Important information, space, available to everyone, saved for the future. Preserve equals save. 38. A recommendation regarding satellites is widely ignored. Recommendation or advice, ignored by many people. 39. There is conflicting information about where some satellites are in space. Conflicting information, like arguments, disagreements, the location of satellites in space. 40. There is a risk we won't be able to undo the damage that occurs in space. Chance or risk, won't undo the damage, happens in space. Occur equals happen equals take place. Now let's go through the text, searching for names and match them with their statements. First is Carolyn Frew. She says, if we go on like this, we'll reach a point of no return. This means that we won't be able to undo the damage. So 40 is A. Then comes Holger Krag. We've already read this piece quite attentively, so we remember that he was worried about operators going bankrupt and not spending money on removing their satellites. To learn more, let's read this part. The intergovernmental groups also advise lowering satellites deep enough into the atmosphere that they will burn up or disintegrate within 25 years. But so far, only about half of all missions have abided by this 25-year goal. Abide by is to follow the rules. So, a recommendation regarding satellites is widely ignored. 38 is B. Next is Marlon Sorge. If you knew precisely where everything was, you would almost never have a problem. 36 is C. Moving on to Mariba Jha. He was comparing space traffic management with managing traffic on the roads or in the air. We read that air traffic controllers know the location of the planes down to 1 meter in accuracy. The same can't be said for space debris. Not all objects in orbit are known, and even those included in databases are not tracked consistently. Also, as we go on, we see that he was describing the results of the database he has developed. It uses several sources, such as catalogs maintained by the US and Russian governments, to visualize where objects in space are. But this doesn't quite work for a number of objects. When he enters the number, the database draws 2 purple lines. So the 2 sources contain 2 completely different orbits for the same object. This information is conflicting. This means that 39, there is conflicting information about where some satellites are in space, is D. We are left with only one statement. 37. Space should be available to everyone and should be preserved for the future. It will also be D. As we read before, Jha wants to make space a place where it's safe to operate, that is free and useful for generations to come. So, we've covered one part of the reading section. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if you found this lesson helpful, and if you'd like to see the second part with a different passage and different types of questions. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tips and tricks on how to ace the IELTS test. As always, remember that getting a high score on IELTS is not an impossible feat. You can do it. Until next time, happy studying, and I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Good luck!